Hello, welcome to Their Eyes Were Watching God, Chapter 18 Analysis by me, Jessica. So, we're just going to read through this passage and then talk about the analysis. I apologize already in advance for my bad dialect impression. Alright, let's get started. Janie achieved the tail of the cow and lifted her head up along the cow's rump as far as she could above the water. The cow sunk a little with the added load and thrashed a moment in terror. Thought she was being pulled down by a gator. Then she continued on. The dog stood up and growled like a lion, stiff standing, hackless, stiff muscles, teeth uncovered, as he lashed up his fury for the charge. Tea-Cake split the water like an otter, opening his knife as he dived. The dog raced down the backbone of the cow to the attack, and Janie screamed and slipped far back on the tail of the cow, just out of reach of the dog's angry jaws. He wanted to plunge in after her, but dreaded the water somehow. Tea-Cake rose out of the water at the cow's rump and seized the dog by the neck. But he was a powerful dog, and Tea-Cake was overtired, so he didn't kill the dog with one stroke as he had intended. But the dog couldn't free himself either. They fought, and somehow he managed to bite Tea-Cake high up on his cheekbone once. Then Tea-Cake finished him and sent him to the bottom to stay there. The cow, relieved of a great weight, was landing on the fill with Janie before Tea-Cake stroked in and crawled weakly upon the fill again. Janie began to fuss around his face where the dog had bitten him, but he said it didn't amount to anything. He'd a raised hell, though, if he had a grabbed me a inch higher and bit me in my eye. You can't buy eyes in the store, you know. He flopped to the edge of the fill as if the storm wasn't going on at all. Let me rest a while, then us gotta make it into town somehow. It was the next day by the sun and the clock when they reached Palm Beach. It was years later by their bodies, winters and winters of hardship and suffering. The wheel kept turning round and round, hope, hopelessness, and despair. But the storm blew itself out as they approached the city of refuge. Havoc was there with her mouth wide open. Back in the Everglades, the winds had romped among lakes and trees. In the city it had raged among houses and men. Tea-Cake and Janie stood on the edge of things and looked over the desolation. "How can I find a doctor for your face in all this mess?" Janie wailed. "Ain't got de damn doctor to study about us. Needs a place to rest." A great deal of their money and perseverance, and they found a place to sleep. It was just that. No place to live at all. Just sleep. Tea-Cake looked all around and sat heavily on the side of the bed. "Well," he said humbly, "reckon you never 'spected to come to this when you took up with me, did ya?" "Once upon a time I never 'spected nothin', Tea-Cake, but bein' dead from the standin' still and tryin' to laugh. But you come along and made something out of me, so I'm thankful for anything we come through together." "Thank you, ma'am." "You was twice noble to save me from that dog. Tea-Cake, I don't 'spect you seen his eyes like I did. He didn't aim to just bite me. Tea-Cake, he aimed to kill me stone dead. I never to forget them eyes. He wasn't nothing all over but pure hate. Wonder where he came from. Yeah, I did see him too. It was frightening. I didn't mean to take his hate neither. He had to die in me one. My switchblade said it was him. Poor me, he'd torn me to pieces if it wasn't for you, honey. You don't have to say if it was for me, baby, 'cause I'm here, and then I want you to know it's a man here." So now it's time for the analysis. The first things that I noticed right away is the similes of the dog stood up and growled like a lion, as the dog is being compared to a ferocious lion and is being compared to as that much of a threat. And the other comparison and simile comes from Tea-Cake, as he splits the water like an otter to save Janie from this threat. Then there's a bit of irony that happens, as they describe the dog as he wanted to plunge in after her, being Janie, but dreaded the water somehow. This is pretty, like I said, ironic, as just before the dog is being compared to as a lion and is equal of a threat, but then when it comes to, like, attacking Janie, he's afraid of water, even though he has angry jaws, and like I said, compared to a lion, but the water's no match for him, I guess. Yeah, and then in this part it says, but he was a powerful dog and Tea Cake was overtired. This, I think, sets up the whole scene of what's about to happen, which is showing the conflict of man versus nature. Because between the storm and the dog, all this happening at once, they're both forces of God that no one has expected, and they cannot be controlled as much as someone like Tea Cake thinks that they're in control. This is the dose of reality of, no, you're not. You need to expect the unexpected. So, he quickly learns that he has no control, I think, too, especially when he gets bitten. They fought, and somehow he managed to bite Tea Cake high up on the cheekbone once. But this also shows us a bit of Tea Cake's characterization, of him just coming between the dog and Janie right when it happened as well. It shows that Tea Cake is acting like a real leader, and ultimately saves Janie with sacrificing him getting bitten over Janie getting mauled to death, pretty much. And it is also showing Tea Cake's dominance and powerfulness of strength and such in a positive light, which is really cool to see, as that's not seen a lot from him, or from any guy, to be honest. But then you see kind of the opposite of the dominance, or kind of the same thing actually, with Tea Cake stroked in and crawled weakly upon the fill again. Janie began to fuss around his face where the dog had bitten him, but he said it didn't amount to anything. So here we see Tea Cake is physically weakened by the fight, as it's being described as he crawled weakly, which is, how much weaker could you get from that? And even though he's physically hurt and lost a lot from this, he still doesn't want Janie to see him as weak. So he shakes it off and says it didn't amount to anything, and kind of makes a joke out of it. But he's afraid to show this emotional side of, yeah, it hurts. Yeah, I've been hurt, because of the dominance again. And then while all this is happening with the whole dog fight and the saving of the life, you're kind of reminded of the storm is still going on, but it all happened as if the storm wasn't going on at all, which just shows chaos is all around, but such a powerful thing just happened with them. Okay, it was next day by the sun and the clock when they reached Palm Beach. It was years later by their bodies. So we'll just break it up from there and continue on in a minute. But I think I underlined this part just to show that the idea is it's in a hyperbole of, it's literally the next day, but it figuratively, an exaggeration is it feels like years later, and it would look like years later if you looked at the way Janie and Tea Cake looked, because winters and winters of hardship and suffering, of also just saying how long and how hard it was to get to the Palm Beach, and the wheel kept turning round and round. Hope, hopelessness, and despair. This is interesting wording, as I think the wheel is symbolism almost for it keeps, all these random things that happened to them is just kept turning, and it brought in different emotions that a wheel would bring, almost round and round. So at first it was hope of, oh, there's a storm, so what, let's have a fun time. But then there was hopelessness, realizing that the storm was no match for them. And then despair coming from almost losing Janie to the dog and such. But the storm blew itself out as they approached the city of refuge. This could be taken literally of, the storm seems like nothing because now they reach the Palm Beach, which is their refuge spot, as it's safe there. But it could also, I think, be used as an allusion, as the city of refuge could also mean the city of refuge from the Old Testament, which is a part of the Promised Land in Israel. And outside of this city of refuge, there was a bunch of horrible things that were happening at the time, of chaos and bloodshed and all these horrible things, but on the inside, God wanted his followers there to be kept away from sin and to be loved and to be forgiven and that kind of thing, which is another interesting way to look at that. Then right after that, you have a personification of Havoc was there with her mouth wide open. Havoc is being personified as a woman, with her mouth wide open, like oozing and like yelling out almost like all this chaos and everything that is happening just is coming from her. And it brought the Everglades wind and romped among lakes and trees in the city and such. So the next part here, we see that they find a place to stay and to sleep. No place to live at all, just sleep. And I think that line is kind of like, even though it sounds sad, I think it's a good thing. Because even though they have no place to live at all and they can sleep, it's almost like, yes, we can sleep, we're alive, we can rest after this horrible thing. And I have you and you have me and we're okay. And that's the most important thing. But meanwhile, that might be the positive outlook. Tea Cake is still upset as he looked all around and sat heavily on the side of the bed, heavy with emotions of guilt and just upset that all this had to happen, because he really does love Janie and he doesn't want to let her down, because you could see this by what he says. He humbly speaks, which is rare too, of, "Reckon you never 'spected to come to this when you took up with me, did ya?" Like, he's feeling worthless, pretty much, not worthless, I should say. He's feeling like just beat up of, I shouldn't have taken her here. I love her so much. I didn't want her to get hurt. I didn't want to lose her. She probably hates me. She probably wishes that she stayed away from me. Thinking like all the worst things right now of what she might be thinking. But the way she responds is shocking to him, as she replies, "Once upon a time, I never expected nothing, Tea Cake." As in, she wasn't happy before. She was being dead from the standing still and trying to laugh. She was not truly herself, not truly happy. But with him, she is, as she says, "But you come along and made something out of me, so I'm thankful for anything we come through together." She has complete trust in him. She is completely in love with him and has found that happiness with someone that she's been longing for so long. So even though all this horrible stuff has happened, she couldn't be happier. This is also seen when she realizes the sacrifice that he made, risking his life for her, which she doesn't feel very appreciated throughout a lot of this. So the act of a sacrifice, I think, really meant a lot for her. As she said, "He aimed to kill me stone dead. He would have torn me to pieces if it wasn't for you." Like, she realizes the sacrifice and she really appreciates him. She also asks a tough question up ahead, as it says, "Wonder where he came from," as she's referring to the dog and maybe even the storm, because she mentions how the dog was like full of pure hate. But even though it was full of pure hate, she might be asking this because even though it brought something so wonderful, which is Tea Cake's bravery and stuff out, and loyalty to her, which is very important to her, I think, at this moment. So she wonders about it and maybe doesn't wish that it never happened, because it's just an odd thing that I think she's wondering. I don't know how to describe that other than that. But yeah, and then there's a small personification after that of Tea Cake talking about his switchblade, said it was him, personifying the switchblade talking, even though it's more his Tea Cake's instincts taking over when he killed the dog, that it was the best thing to do at the moment. But then the last line of all this is also kind of interesting. More characterization of Tea Cake is still pretty static of a character of, I want you to know it was, I want you to know it's a man here. Like, that manly dominance is still very important to him, and he wants to make it clear that he still has this dominance over her, but he can protect her, which is sweet, it seems, but also a little, manly dominance. So that's been my analysis. Thank you so much for listening to me. Bye.